During a seemingly perfect party, Jason's world shatters when his wife Sarah's affair partner, Robert, boldly approaches their table, exposing a secret life of betrayal. As lies unravel and tensions rise, Jason confronts the shocking truth, leading to a series of unexpected twists and revelations. It was supposed to be the perfect evening. We were hosting our annual holiday party, something my wife, Sarah, always went above and beyond for. The house was filled with friends, colleagues, and a few new faces that Sarah had invited from her work. She loved being the center of attention, and I loved seeing her in her element. Everything seemed perfect until I noticed the stranger. He was standing near the bar, talking to some of Sarah's friends. Tall, well-dressed, and confident, he seemed to fit in, but I didn't recognize him. I assumed he was one of Sarah's new work friends. No big deal. I was caught up in a conversation with my boss when Sarah approached me, her smile radiant, pulling me away to introduce me to someone. "Jason, I want you to meet Robert," she said, her hand resting lightly on the man's arm. The stranger turned, and as our eyes met, a strange tension filled the air. Robert's smile was polite, but there was something off about the way he looked at me, almost possessive. "Nice to meet you," Robert said, his handshake firm, a little too firm. "You too," I replied, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. I didn't think much of it at the time, just another of Sarah's overly enthusiastic friends. But as the night wore on, I couldn't help but notice Robert's gaze lingering on Sarah more than was appropriate. As the night progressed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Robert was everywhere. Every time I turned around, he was near Sarah, always just a bit too close. They laughed at private jokes, exchanged knowing glances, and once, I even caught him touching her arm. It was subtle, but it was there. A nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach began to grow. I tried to brush it off as paranoia. After all, Sarah was a social butterfly, and Robert could just be a friendly guy. But something about the way he looked at her, like he knew her intimately, made me uneasy. My mind started to race, piecing together little things from the past few months. Sarah's late nights at work, the sudden guardedness of her phone, the times she seemed distracted even when we were together. I decided to confront Sarah about it after the party, but for now, I played along, smiling and making small talk, all the while keeping a close eye on Robert. The party was winding down, and I was relieved that Robert seemed to be getting ready to leave. I saw him head towards the exit, and I finally started to relax. Maybe I had been overreacting. But then, just as I was about to refill my drink, Robert turned around and walked straight towards me. "Can we talk?" he asked, glancing at Sarah, who was now watching us with a strange, almost nervous expression. "Sure," I said, confused but willing to hear him out. He gestured towards the corner of the room, away from the dwindling crowd. I followed him, feeling a knot tighten in my chest. When we were far enough from the others, Robert didn't waste time. "Jason, there's something you need to know about Sarah and me," he started, his voice low but insistent. My heart began to race. He couldn't possibly be about to say what I thought he was, could he? "We've been seeing each other," Robert said, his eyes steady on mine. "For a while now." My mind went blank. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. Not in the middle of our party, not in front of everyone. But as I looked at Robert, I realized he wasn't joking. His expression was sincere, and the weight of his words hung heavily in the air. I stared at Robert, trying to process his words. The room around us seemed to blur as a wave of anger, betrayal, and disbelief washed over me. Without another word, I stormed over to Sarah, who was chatting with a couple of friends near the fireplace. My jaw clenched, and my pulse pounded in my ears. "Sarah," I called, my voice tight. She turned, and the smile on her face faded instantly when she saw the look in my eyes. "What's going on?" I demanded, my voice louder than I intended. Guests turned to watch, sensing the tension. Sarah glanced nervously at Robert, who stood a few steps behind me. "Jason, let's not do this here," she whispered, reaching for my arm. But I pulled away, the anger boiling over. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Did you think you could just parade your affair around at our own party?" Sarah's face turned pale. She looked at Robert, then back at me, and for a moment, I saw panic in her eyes. But then, her expression hardened. "Jason, it's not what you think," she said, but the tremble in her voice betrayed her. "Then what is it, Sarah?" I shot back, feeling the eyes of our guests on us. "Because Robert just told me everything." Sarah's mask of calm shattered. She pulled me into the hallway, away from prying eyes, her voice frantic and her hands trembling. "It's complicated, Jason. I was going to tell you. But what, Sarah?" I interrupted. "Were you going to tell me before or after you invited him into our home, into our lives?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't the woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved. She hesitated, then finally blurted out, "It started when you were traveling for work. I was lonely, and things just happened." Her confession was a slap in the face, each word stinging more than the last. She tried to explain, to justify her actions, but I wasn't listening anymore. I turned away, feeling sick to my stomach. I needed space, I needed air, but Sarah kept talking, pleading with me to understand. The more she spoke, the more I realized that the person I thought I knew was a lie. I had no idea who this woman was anymore, and it terrified me. I walked out of the house, leaving Sarah and Robert behind. The cold night air hit me, but it did nothing to numb the pain. I paced up and down the driveway, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. I had always prided myself on being a good judge of character, on having a solid marriage. Now, everything felt like a cruel joke. Guests were leaving, giving me sympathetic glances as they passed. I saw Sarah talking to Robert at the door, her expression desperate and conflicted. I couldn't stand to watch. I grabbed my keys and drove off, not knowing where I was going but needing to be anywhere but there. I spent the night at a friend's place, tossing and turning on the couch. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. How long had this been going on? Was Robert the only one? Or were there others? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sarah and Robert together, laughing at some private joke, sharing a secret life I was never a part of. The next morning, I decided I needed answers. I called Sarah, asking her to meet me at a neutral place where we could talk without the shadow of last night looming over us. She agreed, sounding subdued, and we met at a quiet park not far from our house. She looked exhausted, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered why we were there, and the anger flared up again. "I need to know everything," I said, keeping my voice steady. "No more lies." Sarah took a deep breath, and for the first time, she seemed genuinely remorseful. She explained that it started with innocent flirtation that quickly spiraled into something more. She admitted that she had been seeing Robert for several months, sneaking around while I was at work or traveling. She claimed it was just an escape, something to fill a void she felt but couldn't explain. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, tears in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you." I listened, trying to process everything. It felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. Sarah's words were hollow, her apologies empty. The damage was done, and no amount of excuses could change that. Just as I thought I had heard it all, Sarah dropped another bombshell. "Robert's been blackmailing me," she confessed, her voice cracking. "He threatened to tell you everything if I didn't keep seeing him." My jaw dropped. "Blackmail? Why didn't you tell me?" "I was scared," she admitted. "I didn't want to lose you, and I thought I could handle it on my own." I felt a mix of anger and confusion. Sarah's betrayal was one thing, but to hear that Robert had been manipulating her added another layer of complexity. I didn't know who to believe or what to think anymore. Determined to get to the bottom of this mess, I confronted Robert, demanding to know the truth. He denied the blackmail allegations, insisting that their relationship was consensual and that Sarah was lying to save face. It was a classic case of he said, she said, and I was caught in the middle. I realized then that I couldn't trust either of them. Sarah had already proven that she could lie to my face, and Robert had no reason to be honest with me. I decided to cut ties with both of them, focusing instead on protecting myself and moving forward. As the weeks went by, things got messy. Sarah and I began the process of divorce, and it quickly turned ugly. She wanted to keep the house, claiming it was best for the kids, but I knew she was using them as a bargaining chip. Robert continued to lurk in the background, occasionally popping up to stir the pot and make things more difficult. I hired a lawyer, determined to fight for what was mine. The legal battles were exhausting, draining both emotionally and financially. But I refused to let Sarah and Robert win. They had taken enough from me already. During the divorce proceedings, more secrets came to light. I discovered that Sarah had been hiding money, funneling it into a separate account that I knew nothing about. She had been planning her escape for months, even before Robert came into the picture. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about an affair. This was premeditated betrayal. I confronted Sarah again, but she denied everything, insisting that the account was for emergencies. I didn't believe her. I couldn't believe anything she said anymore. Every new revelation felt like another knife in the back. Amid the chaos, I found support from unexpected places. Friends and family rallied around me, offering advice and a listening ear. I started therapy, something I had always been skeptical of, and it helped me make sense of my emotions. Slowly, I began to see a path forward, a life beyond the pain and betrayal. I also reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with during my marriage. They reminded me of who I was before all this, before Sarah and Robert and the lies. It was a small glimmer of hope, but it was enough to keep me going. The divorce was finalized, and I moved into a new apartment across town. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it felt like a fresh start. I focused on my career, throwing myself into work as a way to distract from the pain. I started dating again, taking things slow and allowing myself to heal. Sarah tried to reach out a few times, but I kept my distance. I knew I could never go back, and I didn't want to. The past was behind me, and I was determined to build a future on my own terms. Looking back, I realized that the hardest part wasn't losing Sarah. It was losing the future I thought we had together. But through the pain, I learned valuable lessons about trust, resilience, and the importance of standing up for myself. I wouldn't let betrayal define me or dictate my happiness. Now, I'm focused on building a life that I'm proud of, one filled with honesty and real connections. The scars of the past are still there, but they're a reminder of how far I've come. If there's one thing I would tell anyone going through something similar, it's this: never let someone else's actions determine your worth. You are stronger than you think, and you can get through anything. That chapter of my life is closed, and while the pain will always be a part of my story, it no longer controls me. I'm moving forward, one step at a time, and I know that better days are ahead.